How is it going, everybody? Welcome to Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I am joined, as always, by the floating devil himself, Christian Slater. Christian, how you doing this week?
Sorry for the unexpected plumbing costs this week. I've been doing a lot of work with maple syrup lately. I'm in my brown era.
Yeah, I could tell when you added 50 bottles of syrup, butter flavored specifically. I don't know why that matters. Maybe it's a viscosity thing. I don't know. But you added that to the shopping list, and I checked out before I could realize. So thank you to that. And Instacart customer support was not helpful because they said it was indicative of recent purchasing trends, and they didn't consider it an error. So out $50 there, but we will soldier on. So it was actually a fairly big week on the channel this week. We had videos up almost every day throughout the week, plus they tossed a live stream in there. I'm glad because that last week when I was filming this, I was not feeling very well, but it lasted a day and then I was okay. So we only had to push things back by 24 hours essentially. So that was good. So yeah, lots of stuff to check out on the channel, and I guess we'll dig further into what we've been playing, and we'll start off with, I guess, probably the biggest release of last week, at least for me, because they remade my favorite game, Super Mario RPG, though they took away the Legend of the Seven Stars. I'm actually not quite sure. I guess maybe it's just an easier title or whatever. I don't know. Who cares? But they also have a game called The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, so it's not like they're adverse to wordy titles. But, I was very apprehensive about this game going in. When I saw the initial screenshots and the initial trailer some months ago, obviously I had, some cause for concern because they were making some, significant changes to the game. The visual style was completely overhauled. They had a new soundtrack. At the time, we didn't know this, but it came out later on that it was a new translation. And then it came out just not that long ago, a couple weeks ago, that nobody actually knew who the developer was for the game. I remember, I think it was on the Kind of Funny stream where they were talking about their hands-on preview, and Tim Geddes was like, I don't know who developed this game. There's no name on the splash screen, and that is true. When you start the game, there's no name there. It has the copyright for Nintendo and the copyright for Square, who originally developed the game, but nothing new. And then eventually it came out that it was Arte Piazza, the maker of the Dragon Quest games, that ended up doing it, and I think they've done a great job. But, I was very concerned. I think I've brought this up on the show before, so sorry for being a broken record. But, I missed out on a lot of kind of the really big games of the PS2 era. I had a PlayStation 2 and I had some games, but I was involved in some other things in life besides playing video games during that time. During my teenage years, I had more of a focus on playing music, so I missed out on a lot of the really big PS2 games. So when these games get remastered or remade and stuff like that, very rarely is it one that I've actually played before, so I don't really have any nostalgic connection to it. It doesn't really concern me about changes they made because I'm probably not going to play the remaster anyways, or the remake or whatever it may be. So they haven't really been a concern for me at all. And so when this was announced, and it was like, well, it's not only a remake of a game that I've played, it's also a remake of my favorite game. So it was kind of like that weird feeling of like, oh man, this must be how people feel when they have, a really strong tie to a game, and now it's in the hands of somebody new, and they're tinkering around with it, and it could, is it going to challenge my memories in some way or something like that? But I was very pleasantly surprised with how much I have enjoyed it. I mean, the actual gameplay, like the combat system, hasn't changed too much. There are some changes, I think, for the better, to be honest. The triple attack thing, I could take it or leave it. It's whatever. It's a cool little feature to the game. But I do really like that splash damage thing that they did, where if you perfectly time your attack, because the whole gameplay is built around this timing mechanic, where if you get that perfect timing, it causes splash damage to all the other enemies. I actually really, really enjoy that. And I would not be surprised if that gets kind of essentially ripped off and brought to another game. For all I know, it's in another other game, but I don't play a lot of RPGs, so that could be maybe one of the recent Dragon Quests has it or something like that. I'm not sure, but I really do think that that's a solid change going into it. I've come around on the art style. I think the art style is pretty nice. I haven't had any issues with it. It is nice getting maybe a little bit more detail in some of the characters. I just last night, I'm roughly halfway through the game at this point. There's 7 stars to collect. I'm in the process of getting the 4th star. I played the game a bunch last night. I sat down last night and played quite a bit of it. So I was at the part where you're dealing with Booster, and Booster was always like one of my favorite characters in the game because he's just so ridiculous. He's so dumb, and seeing him like with much more detail in this new art style, like that goofy ass grin on his face, and I was like, man, he's such just a moron. You know, he's a really well written character, and he's a lot of fun. And it was like one of those things where I don't have any video game tattoos. I don't have any tattoos based on any video games that I like. And I always thought, like, if I was going to get a Mario RPG tattoo, I would get, like, Gino or something like that. But, man, I don't know. Maybe I'd get Booster tattooed on me somewhere because he's such a lovable goof. And, I think even with the new translation, I think the humor still stays through. A lot of the humor in that game was physical, so they kept those animations. It's not so much in the dialogue. Like, there is funny dialogue. There is very humorous dialogue in the game. But a lot of it is told through the physical animations of the characters. I think the cutscenes are really well done. Really nicely rendered. They have 60 frame a second cutscenes, which is kind of nice. The new music is very good. If you, for some reason, don't like it or want to revert back to 1996, there is a toggle in the option menu to switch it, which you can do it, I think, at any time except for when you're in battle, which, that makes sense. And I'm just really, really enjoying it. I'm playing the game on the easier mode. It's a game that I've played a ton in my life. Like, I don't necessarily need that challenge. I just kind of want to experience the new aspect of the game with the new look and the new music and just kind of get lost in my favorite game and not really worry about combat too much. I will say that it makes it a little bit too easy at times where there are battles where it's just 2 hits and you're done. Like, you don't even get through your party's full rotation and you've beaten everybody. So that's, it is what it is. But also, if you're somebody that kind of knows the game, you know where some of the secret weapons are and stuff like that. And you can, level characters up very fast and all that. And you become very powerful very early in that game if you kind of know where to look and what to do. But it's such a delight, I've mentioned this a few times throughout this year where there have just been some games that have come out this year. They're just a really nice breath of fresh air. I think that by and large, for the last few years, 5-6 years, maybe even longer than that, going back to the PS4, so many of the biggest games that come out this year or come out every year are very dark, dour games. If you look at the kind of consensus picks for the best games of last year, Elden Ring and God of War, those are not cheery, bright games, right? And you certainly don't need that. And you look at some of the biggest games of this year, like, yes, Baldur's Gate 3 has a lot of humor to it and there's a lot of goofiness and silliness to it, but it is still, this overwhelming evil and there's demons and all that stuff. And you look at stuff like Diablo 4, you look at stuff like Mortal Kombat, which Mortal Kombat actually had quite a bit of humor in it. Even Spider-Man it's got a dark story to it, like human corruption and stuff like that. So this game really stands out in a crowd this year, and I think that's a good thing because I think it provides a nice break for people that are maybe just like, oh my god, it's game after game after game, the world is ending and everybody's dying and I need to save humanity, and it's just like, okay, enough. Like, I need to stop. I need a break, and I've kind of been looking for that recently. I went back because I'm in the process of getting everything ready for end of the year stuff, so I've been trying to play some games that I was really taken aback by back in like February and March, make sure, like, do I still really enjoy this game? How does it stack up against everything else? So I found myself playing some Terrascape this past week on just my own personal time. And it's just like, oh man, this is just so nice. Like, I don't, the world's not dying, I can just play the game. I don't have to worry about humanity's end. And Mario RPG, the same thing. I can just zone out into this brightly colored, funny game and just enjoy myself. And it's been a real treat. I will say, it's tough because one of the things that people have brought up with Mario RPG is there enough there at a full price game to bring in new fans? That's a tough one because it's not a super long RPG. Even games back then in the 90s, the Final Fantasies, Chrono Trigger, Breath of Fire, Secret of Mana, all that stuff, they were 24 hours, 40 hours, whatever it may be. Like, they were very, very long. Especially moved into the PS1 era and the next kind of set of consoles, there were RPGs that were 100 hours, Suikodens and Final Fantasies and all that stuff. And this game is like 12 hours, 14 hours maybe, stuff like that. So does it give you enough at a full price to warrant a new player coming in? It's hard for me to make an unbiased judgment on that because I love this game. I grew up with it. It's a very important game to me. Trying to look objectively at it, for me, if I was brand new to this, I think I would be okay with paying $60 for it. However, I'm also somebody that appreciates a shorter game because doing this YouTube channel and just busyness of life, I like to be able to get through games. I like to be able to churn through stuff. People were complaining about the length of Spider-Man. I 100%ed it in 21 hours or something like that. I'm okay with that. I got my money's worth. I'm perfectly fine with that. Not everything needs to be Baldur's Gate 3 that's 9,000 hours long. And that's not a shot at Baldur's Gate 3. It has enough content to justify it. But not everything needs to be this draconian, punishment of an experience. So is it a tough sell? Yes, it's a tough sale at full price for Mario RPG. Is it a worthwhile sale? Yes, I think it is because I think there's enough there that even if you don't have the connection to the original game, you will get something out of it. It's such a weird kind of thing in Nintendo's history because it has so many elements that you don't typically, or you wouldn't have seen at that time with the physical storytelling, the introduction of these new characters, just simply the RPG combat of a Mario game. This was before Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga stuff and all that. This was a novel concept at the time. And it was made by arguably at the time the greatest RPG developer in the world. So I think that, it's not like you're replaying like a poorly made game and be like, oh, I spent $60 on this and the game sucked. Like, the game far from sucks. Does it lack a lot of modern padding that RPGs have? Absolutely. It is a streamlined experience through and through. Like, max level is 19, 20, something like that. It's not like you're leveling up into the hundreds or something like that. Like, it's very stripped of the fat. And, I think it's got a lot to offer. I would certainly recommend it to new players, and I have really enjoyed my time with it. I imagine I'm going to finish it within the next couple of weeks. Like I said, I'm already essentially halfway done with it, and it's not a super long experience, and this is kind of the last big new release until January for me to really be interested in. So it's one of those things where I'm going to try and cross it off the list so I can finish up some of the other stuff that I'm trying to get through, and I am very pleasantly surprised as somebody that was, looking at it with really squinty eyes, hey, should they be doing this? Is this what we need right now in Mario RPG? But I am glad that I was wrong. I'm very happy that I was wrong and that they did a very, very nice job. It's a great package. And there's post-game content. There is post-game stuff. There's a boss rush type thing, So yeah, if you're on the fence, maybe you want to hear some more thoughts of mine in depth, there is the video up on the channel. It's about an hour-ish into the game, so it's early stuff. So if you haven't played the game, it's not necessarily spoiling anything to any regard. I think I just get into kind of overall plot structure and stuff like that. And the story is not really the draw for the game. The story is enjoyable, but it's the gameplay, it's the characters, it's the funny situations that you get into and stuff like that. That's kind of the draw for the game. So I really recommend it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad I'm playing through it again, and it just further cements itself as my all-time favorite game. It really is a great reminder as to why I fell in love with the game in the first place, why it has continued to hold such a special place in my gaming memories, and it's still, challenges anything new that has come out with advances in storytelling and graphics and gameplay and technology and all that stuff. You know, it's such a timeless game, and I think that this is just kind of exemplifies it, that you can make superficial changes to it, even some gameplay changes to it, and it still shines through as a really great example of one of the finest games of its time. And honestly, I think it's not just me saying it because I like it so much. I think it is one of the greatest games of all time. There's a reason why it makes a lot of lists from different publications. It's the reason why people younger than me that didn't play it when it first came out but have played it before this remake say like, oh yeah, no, it straight up is one of the greatest games of all time. It is. It is for a reason. So check it out if you're interested in it.
So this is the game you've been talking about? A fucking cloud and a wooden boy in a nightcap running around with a small Italian man to fight against a giant sword? No wonder everyone leaves you.
Yeah. I have to hold on to what I can. Thank you for reminding me. All right, next up on the list is the Invincible, which is a adventure game, walking simulator. I'm not quite sure what it is because we haven't... I haven't gotten super deep into it, but I have a look up on the channel, the first half hour or so of the game. I kind of wanted to cut it that early because I didn't know how long the game was. And for stuff like that, you know, I just want to give you the taste. You like as Daddy Magic says, you just want to taste. You know, you don't want to give away the whole thing. And I think for an adventure game where the story and the plot is so key to the experience, you know, you don't want to give too much away. You know, I'm not doing a full playthrough or anything. But I like this kind of game. You know, I mentioned it in the video. You know, I like stuff like Fulbright did with Gone Home and Tacoma. You know, where you don't necessarily have to worry about combat. Maybe there is combat in this game. I'm not quite sure. I played another kind of similar example earlier this year in Fort Solace. That game was definitely a little bit further on the horror, being very up in your face kind of deal. Also had some really rough issues running on PC, so it was difficult to kind of get through that game. I didn't notice any real issues with the Invincible. It was running perfectly fine when I was playing it. I was playing the PC version. I'm not familiar with the source material. You know, they really talk about, you know, the book that it's based on being a really important novel in the history of sci-fi. I don't read sci-fi fiction. It's just not, or sci-fi books. Sci-fi is pretty much all fiction, but, I know, you know, it's just not a genre I really interact with all that much. You know, I never really got into sci-fi and fantasy, especially sci-fi and fantasy novels. Just never really been my thing. I do know that the author is also responsible for Solaris, which was turned into a movie. I've never seen the movie, but I am at least familiar with it. So I can't attest to like how accurate it is to the novel or anything like that, or, you know, changes that were made, characters or settings or places. I read like a really brief overview, I think on like the Wikipedia page for the book, and everything for the most part kind of checked out. Like, okay, I guess, you know, this makes sense. I think it's a decent looking game. You know, sound is, you know, there wasn't that much going on with like music or anything like that. Gameplay is just, you know, you're walking and interacting with things. A little bit of deduction work to kind of figure out where you need to go, but everything is pretty much laid out right in front of you. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I don't even know if I'm going to play more of it. We'll see. You know, like I said, you know, there's not really anything coming out until January. So it's possible that I get through some games over the next few weeks and have, you know, multiple weeks ahead of me with not much going on. So maybe I do get back to it. I'm not positive. But I liked what I played so far. You know, if you're looking for something a little bit different, something maybe a little bit more, I don't know, adult in a way. Like, it's not adult because of violence or nudity or anything like that, but it's definitely, you know, it's a game for, I can't imagine kids would be interested in this game, or teenagers for the most part would be interested in this game. Kind of like Immortality last year, where a lot of people were talking about Immortality as like an adult game. And yes, that game did have nudity and some violence in it, but it was just like one of those things where it's like, you can't imagine like your average like Madden player, you know, that just kind of plays Madden and Call of Duty being like, oh, I'm going to play that Immortality game, or I'm going to play the Invincible. Like, you know, it's not that kind of thing. So if you're looking for something, you know, just definitely off the beaten path of what's out right now. And there hasn't been a lot of super high profile narrative first walking simulator type games that have broken through to the mainstream. You know, I mentioned Fort Solace. You know, there's been a couple over the years, but it seems to me that it's been a little while since one kind of broke through. I don't know if the Invincible is going to do that. I think we probably would have figured that out by now because it's been out for a couple of weeks. But I think it's a really solid game if you're looking for something like that. I think it would have been a really strong choice for Game Pass. I think that this game would have probably done pretty well on Game Pass because you're not, when you look at like the store page for the game and the description and all that, if you're not familiar with the book like me, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into with it. And it wasn't covered super well. I don't remember seeing a lot of previews or video footage of it or anything like that. So I genuinely didn't really know what to expect. And like the gaming podcasts I listened to, like a couple of them mentioned it in passing, like, oh yeah, I think I might check that out or something like that, but nothing really in depth or anything to get into. So I think that if it was on Game Pass and all you had to do was press a button to download it and a little while later you were playing it, I think it probably would have performed a little bit better in terms of the mainstream. I think it probably could have gotten a groundswell of support because, the sci-fi audience is huge. They're always looking for something new and something exciting and something different to check out. So I think it could have caught on, but it is what it is. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in 6 months it ends up on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or something to that effect, or it's given away, as one of those bundles or something like that, and it finds a new audience. But I think it's a neat little thing. I just don't know in a really crowded year if it super stands out, amongst everything. But if you are, if you do have an interest in it, like I said, videos up on the channel, you can check out the first half hour-ish of the game. So next up, I talked about this a little bit last week because it had just come out on that Friday, but I hadn't had a lot of time to dive into it, and that is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, a game that is getting torn apart by fans, by critics, by everybody. And I feel like I'm off to the side because I'm like, well, I'm having fun with it. I think it's all right. So I genuinely think it's all right. I don't have a lot of problems with the game. I'm having fun playing it. I'm not taking it very serious. I just want to go in there and play Terminal 24/7 and have a blast because I really enjoy those games or those maps. I have a very strong connection to those original Modern Warfare 2 maps, and playing them again has been a lot of fun. And it's funny because I was looking on the Modern Warfare 3 subreddit, and people are complaining about camping and stuff in these maps, and it's like, yeah, welcome to Modern Warfare 2, man. That's what we had to deal with. Like, just because there's some new gameplay mechanics and they change the maps up a little bit, it's still the same structure of the map, and a lot of those strategies that worked back then are going to work now. I haven't run into a lot of the issues that other people are having, people getting like booted out of games, the whole thing with people sniping and getting kicked for inactivity. I haven't encountered any of that stuff, so I can't speak to it. It hasn't affected me. But in terms of just like sitting down and just playing the game and not worrying about unlocking things and not worrying about grinding in any sense, like that's what I ended up having to do in last year's game to keep myself entertained because I didn't like the maps. I needed a reason to keep playing the game to justify the money that I spent on it. So I was grinding for all those camos and trying to unlock them. And yes, I ultimately did have fun doing it. But if I really look back a year ago, like, oh, I was just playing the same map with the Shipment 24/7 playlist. I was just playing the same map every single night for hours on end to grind and get a leopard print riot shield. Like, is that really enjoying the game? Like, yes, I'm enjoying my time with it, but the game has so much more to offer than just this one experience. And it just was like, oh, it's because this game is really lacking and this game is kind of a weak presentation. I'm not going to touch the single player in this game because I've heard way too many negative things about it, and I'm not going to waste my time playing something that I'm most likely not going to like when I could be playing the multiplayer, which I know I'm going to like. I think they've been really smart with some of the playlist ideas that they've had. I think Terminal 24/7 is an absolutely fantastic idea because that is one of the most beloved maps in franchise history. I saw that it's coming soon. I didn't play the game today or yesterday, so I'm not sure if it's in there. But I saw that they're going to do like Rust 24/7. I'm not a huge Rust fan. I'll pop in there and play some of it, but I'm not a huge Rust fan by any stretch. And I think they're doing some really smart stuff. The armory unlock thing is very controversial. I think it's a bad idea. I wouldn't have put it in. I understand why they put it in because if you really push through that game, like, it doesn't take you very long to get to level 55, which is max level. Then, you prestige and all that stuff, but you have all your base unlocks done by level 55. So I understand that they wanted to counteract that because a lot of people can get to level 55 in a week. Like, if I had played every night this week and didn't play other stuff, I would probably be at level 55 by now. I'm thinking like level 25 or 30 or something right now. Because I had so much double XP built up from the last game that carried over, which was very nice. And then I wouldn't have had anything to unlock aside from doing the camo challenges and all that stuff. So by doing the armory thing, it allows you to keep unlocking things after you're leveled out, because you need to do these daily challenges to earn points to unlock things in the armory system. And a lot of people were pretty upset about that. And then they did this patch earlier this week where it was like, hey, if you can't do these daily challenges, like they're too difficult or they're just not something you want to do because it's not your play style, or maybe you don't have this thing unlocked or something like that, you can now earn the points by just getting wins in games. And I think that's a great change. I think that makes that system a lot more palatable. The other change, big change that they made was, and then the other, sorry, not big change, but the other thing that they showed was they teased like the next round of maps that will be a part of Season 1, which are original maps, because all the maps that are in the game are from the original Modern Warfare 2, and they look interesting just from the screenshots. Like, they actually look fairly promising. And it's like, man, this is just... I think if you stop complaining so much about this game and stop being so worried about, your status of unlocking things or getting camos or whatever it may be, or getting killed by a camper, and just embrace the chaos of this game and embrace these maps, like, you're going to have a lot more fun with this game. And if ultimately you can't do that, then maybe Call of Duty is just not for you. There are plenty of other first-person shooters either out there on the market already or are coming on the horizon, like X-Defiant and the Finals. You can find something else. There's nothing that says you have to play Call of Duty every year. I've taken time off. I didn't think Black Ops Cold War looked good, so hey, you know what I did? I just didn't buy it that year. I just didn't play Call of Duty for a year, and I'm okay. It didn't affect my life in any way. So I think that people just need to stop getting so wrapped up in these things. And like, yes, should this game have been DLC to Modern Warfare 2? Absolutely it should have. It's not enough to be a standalone game. But take it for what it is now that you have spent the money to acquire it. It is a great selection of maps. It's a very solid playing game, even with the adjusted time to kill. I still think it's a little bit too long. But I am getting used to it, and just enjoy what you have, because we are getting some of the greatest maps of all time in Call of Duty history front and center for us to enjoy and play, and just chill out a little bit about it. It's fun to play. If it's not for you, you don't need to complain about it online. You don't need to complain about it while you're playing the game and yelling into a headset. You could just simply not play the game. You don't have to. It's okay. Your personality doesn't have to be that I play Call of Duty and hate it and complain about it to everybody. Like, nobody really wants to hear that. So that's my piece. I am enjoying it. We got a couple streams up on the channel. If you want to check out some gameplay of me being just super high level at the game, just unbelievable talent. I'm doing very well. I've settled in quite a bit at this point now that I've been playing it on my own time, where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm getting back to being effective at the game. Still trying to relearn these maps. Some of these maps I have not played in a very, very long time. And I realize that some of these maps are in the rotation, like, man, I played a lot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 when it first came out, and I just don't remember getting this map that much in the rotation. I really don't remember this friggin' map. Like, I remember, like, I understand what it is, and it's like, oh, I've definitely played it before, but I don't think it showed up that much in the rotation, and I think maybe they're pushing some maps a little bit more that aren't the super fan favorite ones, because they had to remove a couple of maps due to some problems. So like Quarry's not in there, and I think one other one's not in there right now. But yeah, I'm having a blast with it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad that hardcore mode is in from the start. And you don't have to worry about it being brought in later or some weird offshoot version of it or anything like that. So I am having a good time with it. I'm happy to play it, and I'm going to continue playing it because it's my traditional Thanksgiving and Christmas game every year. So something I equate with the air gets colder, the draft comes in through my window, and I have to be wrapped up in a blanket, and I just play Shipment all night. It's it's tradition at this point. It's ritual.
Now this is what I'm talking about. Finally, we're playing some man games in this house. Get the chest hair and Mountain Dew, because I'm about to come some double XP headshots all over this place. God, the sight of shell casings gets me turgid.
Cool. Why don't you go out and get some Mountain Dew for that double XP and just never come back? That would be great. Thank you. All right. Last up, we won't spend too much time on this because, I've put a couple of videos up already with kind of my overall thoughts, but I got to spend a little bit more time with the full version of Robocop Rogue City. You got the video up on the channel if you want to check it out. Just kind of continuing off from the demo, so I'm not super far into the game. I'm going to keep trying to play it in my personal time. It's tough because I kind of have three really big games that I still am trying to push through with this, Alan Wake 2, and Phantom Liberty. I actually got to play a little bit of Phantom Liberty the other day. I kind of like forced myself to sit down and play another hour of it. I've been picking away Alan Wake 2 in kind of like half-hour chunks lately, and trying to get through as much of that as I possibly can. But RoboCop Rogue City, I mean, it's the surprise of the year, right? I think it's like the absolute hidden gem of this year, and I don't even know if you can call it a hidden gem because it's getting a ton of praise, like mainstream praise. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't quite qualify as a hidden gem, but I think it really is. It's the game that when I first saw it and I saw who's developing it, and I was like, oh, RoboCop first-person shooter, like, is that really what I want? And I was just so down on it. And then to sit there and play it when the demo came out, I was like, oh my God, they like knocked it out of the park. Like, this is really solid. But getting a little bit further into the game, yeah, you could start to see the cracks a little bit. I'm not super into the open world-ish nature of it. There are times, you can see it in the video that I put up, where you get an objective and you just can't figure out where you're supposed to go. And I just ended up having to abandon it for the sake of the videos. I didn't want to be stuck trying to figure out how to get into this grocery store. But overall, I think it's a really nice experience. I think it's a pretty good looking game. Like, some of the lip sync issues are pretty rough, but I think overall it's a really pleasant game to look at. Like, getting into that arcade and the glow and all that, I think they do a really good job with it. It is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and we're starting to see more of those hit the market. And man, they could do some really pretty stuff with that engine. And I think this is a solid example of, one of the nicest looking kind of, let's say, for lack of a better term, first generation of Unreal Engine 5 games. I think it runs really smooth. They haven't had any performance issues or anything like that. Lots of fun characters. The voice acting is bad in a really good way. And just a really enjoyable experience. A fun first-person shooter. It's got the RPG elements in there. I haven't messed around with that stuff too much because I'm still pretty early in the game, so I haven't really unlocked a lot of points to put into things. I also don't really see the need to use other weapons besides your main pistol, especially because it has unlimited ammo, and enemies go down, for the most part, fairly quickly. There's a couple of times where you're kind of putting a decent amount of rounds, and it's like, how come this guy's taking more damage than this guy next to him? Like, that, it just kind of doesn't add up, but, it is what it is. I would say that it is definitely, like I said, the biggest surprise of the year in a good way. And I would definitely recommend it. It's a tougher sell if you're not into the movies. If you're not a fan of those first two movies, it might be a little bit harder for you to get into it because, you can ignore a lot of the flaws and issues of what is solidly a B game. Because you have an appreciation and a love and a nostalgia for the source material. So I think if you don't have that attachment, it is definitely tougher to get into. You're not going to understand some of the references. You're not going to understand probably a decent amount of what's happening in this game. But I think there is still a solid game there for people to play and enjoy. So that's going to wrap up what I have been playing, and we will be back in just a moment with the news. All right, we are back with the news, and we are starting off with Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. It is kind of resurfaced after going away for most of the year. So this is the next entry from Rocksteady, the maker of the Arkham games. So it got announced a few years ago. And then a big leak happened at the very beginning of this year. Then they did their first big kind of showcase of gameplay in February, I believe it was. And it got torn to shreds. And I will say that I was among those talking down on it because it looked like trash. There were a lot of things that just did not make sense about this game. I did not quite understand what they were doing. People are not happy about the fact that it was a live service game and there was going to be quite a bit of microtransactions and like an always online type thing and lots of generic enemies, and some of the characters didn't have weapons or attacks that made sense for the superhero that they are, and it just did not look good at all. So not long after that, They delayed the game. It was supposed to be out in May of this year. All of this happened in February. They then delayed the game all the way until February of next year. So they essentially delayed the game a whole year. They haven't really talked about it since then. Well, they came out with a kind of a big video this week. They are calling it the Suicide Squad Insider. I skimmed through it. It was 20 minutes long. I wasn't going to watch the whole thing because I'm not super interested in this game. But the big takeaway from it is that they really downplay the live service element. They make mentions that there are going to be seasons and they're going to add new characters, but they are going to be free seasons and free new characters. There is still going to be a paid aspect to the game. They're going to have a battle pass, which similar to Call of Duty's battle pass, where if you buy the battle pass, every time you unlock a level on it, you get something. Where if you don't pay for the battle pass, you're still unlocking things, but you're only getting the stuff that is designated a free unlock. If you then later on, for whatever reason, buy the battle pass, all previous unlocks will unlock for you and you'll have them. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly the way it would happen here. I have to imagine it would. That's pretty standard practice for battle passes these days. So the game is coming out February 2nd, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. They're doing their 3-day early access thing if you pay $100 for it. Looking at the gameplay, it's tough because Rocksteady has a really good track record. Those Arkham games were really beloved. I personally didn't really get into them. I didn't particularly care for Arkham City all that much. I thought it was fine, but I kept getting lost in it. I don't know, maybe if I had played with a walkthrough or something to get through some of those tough parts where I was getting lost, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. I did like Arkham Asylum. I thought it was pretty solid. I enjoyed it. I actually ended up playing quite a bit of Arkham Origins due to a weird situation where I had to test a copy of the game. And I actually thought that was okay, but I'm not sure if Rocksteady actually made that. That might have been the one that was made by the offshoot, like WB Montreal or something like that. But the combat system, was pretty revolutionary at the time. A lot of games kind of aped it. Even still to this day, the modern Spider-Man games, their combat is very rooted in this. The game that I always thought did the system the best was Sleeping Dogs. Just simply because of the amount of environmental attacks and just the sheer brutality of the game and stuff you could do in it. So the way I look at Suicide Squad when I was watching this footage earlier was it looks a lot like Gotham Knights, and Gotham Knights was a really enticing game to look at and be like, oh man, I remember those Arkham games. This looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. All these multiple superheroes that you can play around with, and then you actually play Gotham Knights and you're like, oh, this is a really shallow experience and it's really disjointed and it's just ultimately not that fun. And that's what I worry about this. This is a very slick looking game. Really nice presentation. This video is edited very well to show the best parts of what they have to offer. I just worry that it's going to be one of those things where, it's like a hat. The hat looks really nice. And you're like, oh, I'm going to look good in this hat. And I'm going to put this hat on my head and I'm going to enjoy this hat. And then you put the hat on the head, but the lid's, the top's missing. And you just go through and it's like, oh, it's a hat with a hole in it. I mean, it looks nice if you can't see the hole, but once you notice the hole, you can't stop looking at the hole, and then you're stuck in the hole. And you don't want to be stuck in the suicide hole. You don't want to be stuck in the butthole of King Shark or whoever the hell Samoa Joe is playing. So I don't know. I'm not going to buy this when it comes out. There's no way on earth, unless I am severely hard up for entertainment in a couple of months. There's no way I'm going to pick this up at launch. Unless they really blow people away with these insider videos leading up to, I don't know, maybe then I would have to for coverage for the channel or something. I don't know. I still don't think they've done enough, because even if they downplay a lot of that live service stuff and they've had an additional year to work on the game, if your game is designed and developed around this live service aspect, that's really hard to just strip out, because you've made certain narrative decisions, gameplay decisions, design decisions that are tied to this being a live service game, and then you just take it all away and be like, okay, now we have to completely change everything. I don't think you can get that done in a year. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll prove us all wrong and they come out with something really incredible, but I don't know, I just don't see it. I think also, for the most part, the DC stuff, I think superhero stuff is starting to leave the mainstream a little bit. The Marvel stuff has been really down at the box office. I think the Marvels had one of the worst box office opening for an MCU movies ever. The DC stuff continues to just look laughingly bad. Every time I see one of those DC movies, either a trailer or actually watch the movies. I watched that Blue Beetle movie earlier this year. For whatever reason, like they have very similar budgets to the Marvel movies, and I don't know if it's just a talent choice or what it is, but their CG just always looks so rough. Like it really takes me out of the movies. Like their movies just look like glorified TV shows. They don't look like cinema. They don't look like a big grand thing that should be enjoyed at a movie theater. They look like an episode of one of their CW shows, just 2 hours long. You know, I don't know what I can't put my finger on. I can't find the words to accurately convey what my issue is with it, but they just look off. Like that's the best way I can put it. And this kind of is the same thing. Like this game just looks off. Like it just looks like it could be good, but you can just tell by looking at it that it's just not going to be, right? Like it's just, there's just something about it. And that sucks because I'd love for DC to have a big win. You know, they've had a really hard time showing that they are more than Batman. With how successful Batman has been at the box office outside of those DCU Batman movies like the Ben Affleck ones. And I don't have a problem with Ben Affleck. I like Ben Affleck quite a bit. Those side shoot movies like the Robert Pattinson Batman and of course the Nolan Batman movies, you know, those were kind of where the DC stuff shined, and it was just one singular character kind of off in its own thing, doing its own world, not, you know, interacting with the greater universe or anything like that. And then once they tried to tie it all in, you know, those filmmakers didn't want to do that, and they had to cast a different Batman, and it was just odd. So I don't know, maybe I'll be proven wrong. I don't think so on this one. All right, next up, another DC game, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman has been long coming, and there have been rumors going around that it is going to be a live service game, but Warner Brothers issued a statement to IGN telling them that it won't be a live service game. And this all kind of stems from the Warner Brothers Discovery CEO, everybody's favorite, David Zaslav, who said he wants to turn all of its gaming franchises into live service games. And this is a quote that he said. This is actually last week. I probably should have covered this on last week's show, but I think I just kind of missed it. But this is his quote. Our focus is on transforming our biggest franchises from largely console and PC based with 3 to 4 year release schedules to include more always on gameplay through live services, multi-platform, and free-to-play extensions, with the goal to have more players spending more time on more platforms. Ultimately, we want to drive engagement and monetization of longer cycles at higher levels. We have specific capabilities. We are currently under scale and see significant opportunity to generate greater post-purchase revenue. And he specifically mentions that he wants to transform the Harry Potter franchise, Game of Thrones, DC, and Mortal Kombat into live service games. Mortal Kombat sounds weird. Mortal Kombat as a fighting game essentially already is a live service game because they have DLC'd the hell out of that game. A lot of people were very upset with how much money they were charging for those seasonal fatalities. But, you know, for the last cycle of Mortal Kombat games, they've gone heavy on post-game DLC purchases of new characters and all that. And that hasn't changed with this game. So if you're concerned about Mortal Kombat going live to service, stop, because it already has. And it has been for quite some time. But for Harry Potter, that's a really odd one because Hogwarts Legacy sold like a bajillion units this year. It's like their most profitable game out there. Like, why would you see that and go, oh, we need to change this? This came out and made us a ton of money, but we need to change it now. That just seems totally backwards, totally insane. But this is also the guy that's trying to ruin HBO, so it doesn't really surprise me. But this article about Wonder Woman possibly being a live service game comes from VGC. This is by Chris Scullion's article, so I'll be paraphrasing from him. But they found a job listing for lead software engineer gameplay at Monolith Productions. It says, join the Wonder Woman team and help bring an iconic DC superhero to life. It says one of the qualities in the nice to have category of what they're looking for an employee references live services. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be in, Warner Brothers released a statement to IGN saying it absolutely isn't, but then they also have their CEO saying that all their games are going to be live service games, so who the hell knows? The reason why this is kind of a big deal is because if you remember Monolith, who made the Shadow of War, the pair of Lord of the Rings games there, they came out with that Nemesis system that everybody really liked. And me, as somebody who has a strong distaste for Lord of the Rings stuff, even I enjoyed those games. And I thought that system was really cool because they ended up patenting the system, which means that nobody else can use it. And now that they're making this Wonder Woman game, it's kind of leaked out, that it's going to have this Nemesis system, which a lot of people are really excited for. And if, the Lord of the Rings games got non-Lord of the Rings fans drawn in because of the system, potentially you would see the same thing happening here. Wonder Woman at the box office kind of ultimately failed. Those movies didn't do great. It didn't launch the character to the upper echelon of being a very popular modern day superhero character. Of course, it's one of the timeless superhero characters and iconic superhero characters for comic book fans. But comic book companies don't necessarily care about the comic book fans anymore. They're still certainly putting out good comic books and servicing that audience, but they see so much more money to be made via video games, television, and movies. So with Wonder Woman coming out and could potentially be this really big game, having this Nemesis system, I think it draws a lot of apprehension of like, oh man, they're finally going to put this really amazing system into a game. And it's a superhero game, so it has the ability to be this really like over the top thing that can only be accomplished in video games. But then it's going to have live service elements. Like, really? I'm curious if Suicide Squad still has those live service elements, even though they're really downplaying it. Leading up to it, if it still has those and it just totally completely bombs, if that sends them a message of, oh, we need to like super double down on this, or maybe we should really rethink this strategy and go in a different direction. Knowing Warner Brothers Discovery, they're probably going to go, no, we need to double down on this, and then nobody will be happy. So we shall see. Christian, you have any thoughts on Wonder Woman? I know you like the superhero stuff, right? You're big into that stuff.
I don't see what the problem with live service gaming is. If a bunch of nerds want to spend money on digital skirts for Wonder Woman to live out their fantasies of leaving their homes for the first time, just let them. Take advantage of those who allow themselves to be taken advantage of just so they have something to talk about online.
You weirdly have a point. If people are going to keep spending money on skins and dumb unlocks, and they don't really have the right to complain. So yeah, I guess, sure. Why not? You're somewhat right. So I believe it was either Friday morning or perhaps Thursday evening where a leak happened on a store listing that said that Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered was coming out for the PlayStation 5. We had seen some stuff leak about this. One of the people that worked on the soundtrack for the game said that he was called back to do some work because they were going to put in this new gameplay mechanic where you could just play Ellie's guitar without the confines of having to play along with a song. That was an aspect of the game. And then Friday night, they just officially announced it and released a trailer. It's like they said, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, coming out in, I think, the beginning of next year. Yes, January 19th is when it is coming out. They put out a trailer. It looks very nice. It's a very good game. I enjoyed the game quite a bit. Certainly a controversial game, but those people can shut up because a lot of the shit that they were talking about was totally wrong and unfounded and quite frankly offensive. But that's neither here nor there. Let's just talk about the game for what it is, a great game. Maybe a little bit too long of a game, but still a great game. So, what are you getting in a remastered mode? Well, actually quite a bit. So there's going to be a 4K fidelity mode or a 1440p upscaled to 4K performance mode that runs at 60 frames a second. There will be variable refresh rate support, LOD settings, sharper texture, smoother animation rates, and then DualSense controllers now that it's on the PS5. They're also going to have some lost levels that allows you to play through areas of the game that were cut from the final release, which is actually pretty cool. They're putting in a speedrun mode, a photo taking mode, bonus skins, and that guitar playing mode that was talked about and that was showed off. They are going to do a collector's edition as well called the Wolf Edition. Comes with a steelbook case, pins, patches, and I think something else. Oh, trading cards. It comes with the trading cards that you can find as a collectible in the game. And then the other big thing, probably the biggest addition to the game, is a new mode called No Return. This is coming from Zach Weisen's article at Kotaku. You choose a character and then try to survive in randomized encounters. It's not clear if actual maps are randomized, and surviving lets you win meta progression to enhance your character's abilities, unlock cosmetics, and compete on global daily challenge leaderboards. It is a roguelike game. And all of that can be seen in the trailer. It's also, the game is also going to have developer commentary. So a whole bunch of stuff. You're not just getting a nicer looking game. So I think it's nice that this is finally over and done with. I kind of just want to see what they do next. I think if they were smart, I know a lot of people that I talked to when Last of Us 2 came out felt like that game was wrapped up at the end of it. And I certainly don't see it that way. I think that there is absolutely room for a sequel. Ellie is left without absolutely anything. The only thing she has left in the world is, oh God, who was the... Abby. That's all she has left, and she let her live, so she is going to seek her out because that's the only person she has left in her life. Everybody else has left her, and I think that there's a good story to tell there. I think due to the success of the HBO show, they should really be focusing on making Last of Us Part 3. As much as I would love to see another Uncharted or a wholly new IP from them, I think they should probably be making Last of Us Part 3 and just get it done. Just get it over and done with, finish it, get it out, and then move on to whatever the hell you want to move on with. But that's just me. Am I going to get this when it comes out? Probably not, but I'll play through that game again at some point. I played through the first one again years after the fact, and to me, it's still too soon to play this game, even though it's been a while. It's over 3.5 years since that game came out. I think it was a summer 2020 game. So it's going to be a while before I feel the need to play the game again. But if I'm going to play the game again, I want it to look as nice as possible. And judging by the trailer, it looks quite nice, and I like the little details. I think the coolest thing to me is that roguelite mode I probably wouldn't play too much of. But the coolest thing to me was those like lost levels. You don't really get to see a lot of that stuff, and having like the developer commentary. I remember when they put the developer commentary into Portal, and that was really interesting to hear them talk about that stuff as you were playing the game. And I'd like to see more developers do that. It's difficult with a video game because it's not like director commentary in a movie where every time you watch that movie the same thing is going to happen. I think the way it would work is, you would have to trigger it as you progress through the game because you might want to go off and explore or something, and maybe they're talking about something that doesn't make any sense for what you're doing. But I'd like to see some more of that in there. I think it's kind of a neat thing, and it gives you, another incentive to play through a game again. All right, next up, Sega is teasing some movie stuff. So the Sonic movies have done very well for Sega, and they would like to branch out and make adaptations of Persona and Yakuza. And I thought it was weird that they called it Yakuza and not Like a Dragon, because in Japan, it's always been Like a Dragon, but that's weird. And this was a quote from somebody that works at Sega, and they were still calling it Yakuza. So Sonic the Hedgehog 3, that movie, is supposed to come out next year at the very tail end of the year, and they're doing a television series as well to lead up to that. And this is coming from Sega's COO, Shuji Utsumi. It says he wants to build on the success of Sonic's recent movie and TV outings by adapting some of their other IPs, and specifically calls out Persona and Yakuza, better these days known as Like a Dragon. So Persona has had an anime in the past. They did an anime for at least Persona 4. There might have been one for Persona 3. And there actually has been a Yakuza movie. Yakuza movie came out all the way back in 2007. It was directed by Takeshi Miike, who did Audition and Ichi the Killer. So they actually have done these things in the past. But I think they are talking about things that maybe would be a little bit more palatable to an American audience. I don't know if there was an English dub for that Persona anime. I remember watching an episode of it and it had subtitles, but there probably is a dub at this point. I don't think a live action Persona movie works. I think those games are too colorful, too out there, too weird that it would just look really low budget and odd, kind of like how we talked about the Zelda movie last year. Doing a Zelda thing live action just makes no sense whatsoever. So I think that would be better for it to be animation. And I think it could be really successful. Those stories are really wild and they could definitely find a good following, especially when you saw like the success that the Cyberpunk anime had on Netflix. A lot of people really liked that, and even people that didn't play the game found enjoyment in it. So I think that that's what you do. I think you find like an established anime studio and just go full force with it. Have a really good English translation ready to go. Have a really good English dub ready to go. Maybe bring in some higher profile actors to do stuff, although that could be tough because you are dealing with teenagers, but I'm sure there's plenty of young actors. Euphoria is a thing, right? They're all young, right? Maybe just get the cast of Euphoria to be in there. And I think that, especially if you start with like Persona 4, I assume they would start with Persona 5, which is kind of like their cash cow right now. They've done so many offshoots and there's really no signs of slowing down with Persona 5 stuff right now. I could certainly see them starting with that, but I think Persona 4 story, I think just has a little bit more intrigue with it, with the kind of the murder mystery stuff that's tossed in there. And I think that would make a really good, episodic thing. I think that if they were probably smart, they would do like, hey, we're doing 15 episodes, 20 episodes, a little bit longer than you would normally see. And it's the entire length of the game, and they just go, here's Persona 4, here's Persona 5, and I think that could do really well for them. But it seems like they want to turn these into movies. I don't know if you can truncate the story of these dozens and dozens of hours long games into a feature length thing, unless you're like really banking on like, no matter how well this movie does, we're going to put a cliffhanger at the end and pick it up with a sequel. Like that's kind of a tough sell. Who knows? But it's cool that they're talking about branching out and not just focusing on Sonic, because Sonic is doing really well outside of video games, but in video games Sonic is actually struggling quite a bit. So to take kind of their best performing video games, a Persona and Like a Dragon, and trying to keep the fire going, from the video game side, but also capitalize that and make it start to pick up, in television or movies, that's a smart idea. So I think that's probably a decent direction for them to go into.
I could definitely be in the Yakuza movie. I look good in a suit. I'm missing several fingers that no one knows about thanks in part to modern CGI, and I've got pearls inserted into various body parts.
You're a head inside of a television. Like, no one's going to cast you. Is your old body still around somewhere even? I mean, don't you just exist in a void inside of a CRT at this point? Whatever, man. Cool. Our last studio, following up on a story from quite a while ago, Mac Walters, who had left BioWare, has finally announced what he's going to do with his life. So Mac Walters, if you're not familiar with him, he worked at BioWare for almost 20 years. He was one of the writers on Jade Empire, a seriously underrated game, one of BioWare's best. Then he was the lead writer on Mass Effect 2 and 3. He was a creative director on Mass Effect Andromeda, and then he was also the project director of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition remasters, and then he was the production director on Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which is still underway, so he has left while that game was still being developed. He has announced that he is partnering with Chinese publisher NetEase and starting a new studio that is called, where did it go? Worlds Untold. And they have announced their first project will be an action-adventure game with a narrative focus. It says that the game is meant to span multiple games and cannot be contained by even a single medium. So it sounds like they want to branch out and make this, it's going to be a comic book or a movie or whatever to go along with. I don't know. That's a lot. Maybe just focus on making a game first. But NetEase has been doing quite a bit of stuff lately with gathering people from around the industry. They grabbed the former lead of the Like a Dragon series, Toshihiro Nagoshi. He started his Nagoshi studio. They also acquired Grasshopper Manufacturer. They're the people that make No More Heroes. And they're really trying to kind of pick up steam. Mac Walters he's a great storyteller, probably one of the best video games has seen for the past 20 years. So if you're going to build a studio around somebody, that's that's not a bad choice to start with. I have a deep love for the Mass Effect games and a deep love for Jade Empire. Mass Effect Andromeda not so much, and Dragon Age not so much. But he is a really solid choice, and I'm sure he's got some good stories to tell. So, it's too early to see what's going to happen. I'm sure it's going to be several years before we really hear anything concrete about what he's got going on. But I eagerly look forward to it. So that wraps up the news for this week. So coming out on the channel this week, honestly, probably not much. It is Thanksgiving this week, so it's probably gonna be a little bit slower pace. What I was thinking about, because there's no like big video game release this week or anything like that. So what I was thinking about doing just to have something up is we'll probably do another stream this week, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'll probably just play some more Modern Warfare because that's just what I feel like playing, and I enjoy streaming it. So we'll probably do some of that. We'll see if they have any like weird playlists going on. Hopefully the Terminal one's still going, or that Rust one. We can jump into that. But other than that, I've been spending quite a bit of time working on the Next Perfect Reload video. So I break those the way I animate those videos and create them is I kind of break them down into sections. This one ended up being 10 sections, and I have 6 out of the 10 totally done and edited. So I just need to do the last 4. So making pretty good progress, a lot faster progress than I thought. Some of the stuff with this video in particular, just a little bit of inside baseball, is I don't necessarily have to animate the whole thing because there's recurring characters. So if I already draw them once, I don't have to draw them again. I can use the original drawing, so that saves quite a bit of time. But I think it's going to be a fun video. Looking forward to getting it out there, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it once I know it's totally done and ready to come out. But I would say hopefully within the next few weeks it's out. But it's going to be a busy couple of weeks coming up. So I've talked about that I enrolled in some classes to make a career change. I have my final exam coming up a week from tomorrow. So I have to do quite a bit of studying and practicing, doing practice tests and all that stuff to get ready for that. So the kind of my focus is there. And then also with video games kind of slowing down, it's allowing me to focus a little bit more on doing some music. I don't really talk about this too much, but I do make music. I put out an album last year, and that took up a lot of time. And then earlier this year, I was working on kind of a follow-up, but I ended up abandoning it. I just wasn't happy with where it was going. But the inspiration has struck a little bit over the past couple of weeks, so I've been spending some extra time working on some new music. So it's not that this channel is going to take a backseat or anything like that, but just kind of using the opportunity of no big video game releases coming out for the foreseeable future. I think the next one I'm interested in is Prince of Persia, which I think is either the middle or the end of January. Of course, looking at it could be like the second day of January or something for all I know, but it's at least several weeks away. So so lots to look forward to on the channel. Just probably not too much going on this week as I am knee deep in editing that video, but we will at the very least we'll stream some Call of Duty and hang out. But that's going to do it for me. Christian, you have anything you want to say before we head out?
This week is Thanksgiving. Yep. I'd like to say that I am very thankful for my patience that allows me to allow you to live in my house.
This is my house, and I will take you to court. That's going to do it for me, everybody. Take it easy, and we'll see you again real soon.